crypto is a growth process. Like you grow, you mature, you evolve spiritually and emotionally as a human. It's a complete shift, feeling empowered about your finances. I was not only able to spend more time for myself, but it was really a time of like intimately getting to know myself, know my power, step more in alignment with my mission. I'm like really learning how to fall in love with myself, understanding who I am, getting comfortable in my body. It's amazing what happens when you have time and space to be able to shift from one way of being to then be walking this path of teaching about money, wealth, consciousness, crypto in a way that is completely in alignment with me. Like that took time and resetting.
That is such a big part of what this conversation really is. Building wealth or building even just more financial stability to have more freedom to do whatever I choose to do. It's like, I think about my animals, I think about my family, I think about my community, so when I make it be less about just me and make it more about like the larger picture of how this can be in service to not only the people immediately in my world, but also for the evolution of humanity. All these little baby steps that are no small steps. It's like we are growing in our self-trust as we move through this space. Well, hey there, and welcome back to Fire and Soul, the space to deepen your divine alignment and further activate your inner awakening. And oftentimes it's the external awakenings, like what are the opportunities that we are waking up to and that we are beginning to see and notice and possibly pause and begin to get ourselves present to real opportunities in front of us. And that's exactly what this conversation's intention is. It's Crypto 101 with a dear friend of mine that I actually only met the very first week that I was in Austin, but there were so many synergies in the space of common law, specifically being embodied spiritually and consciously, and just being on a path that aligns with a future that we want to co-create. And part of that is getting acquainted with crypto and what that might mean for a legacy of our own, and certainly a contribution in ways in which we can be of service to all with what will we do with the abundance that could possibly be ours by investing wisely. And what I love about this conversation is that the through line and at the heart of it all is learning how to embody and align with self-trust and self-love and the resiliency that is awaiting us when we are willing to turn inward and follow those nudges that are calling us forward, that require tremendous spiritual strength and courage in an otherwise complicated, confusing, overwhelming, and volatile topic known as crypto. Everyone I know basically has a story, including myself, of knowing someone who's lost their booty in crypto and is like, oh, I'm never, ever getting involved with that again. And there's a lot of reasons why that could have happened. And so we touch on that. We also give a nice introductory as to what is crypto, how does it work, how to learn about it, and then ways in which you might find yourself working with a mentor or a guide yourself. And so inside this conversation, what I love the most about it is that it is really about aligning with a future that is created by the people for the people. And that is at the heart and the love language of Fire and Soul for all things freedom, sovereignty, autonomy, and really humanity. So this conversation feels really special, very timely to say the least, and you're going to love hearing about why. And so let me give you a little bit on Whitney. I'm going to read it here. She's a crypto mentor for women and founder of Queen of Millions community. She is for women who want freedom, exponential growth, and to have their money aligned to the changing times. She left her corporate engineering career in 2020, withdrew her 401k, and turned it into a value of $500,000, which has allowed her over the past 3 years to travel the world and enjoy life without having to work. By the way, that 401k investment was 25K. So it had an over 22x in 9 months' time. You're going to love her story. Now, as the crypto market is heating up, she helps women replicate her results in their own and welcomes them into the crypto world, the aligned and simplified way. Whitney's vision is for more women to live life on their own terms, trust in themselves, and shift big wealth into the souls of the good. I love this conversation. I love this time. It's such an exciting time to be alive. So, without further ado, my friends, please enjoy Investing in Self Trust and the Crypto Revolution with Whitney Woodcock. Whitney, I'm so happy to have you here. It's so funny because you're probably 5 minutes away in Austin, but yeah, we're still meeting virtually because I don't yet have my podcast little setup in the way that I envision soon. But anyway, it's so wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. Yeah, so thrilled to drop in today.
I want to give a little perspective of how we met. And it feels so meant to be because so much has shifted and opened in me ever since I actually finally answered the call to come to Austin. And I knew that it was for a couple of different reasons, community, number one, but also what my soul knew I was meant to learn and study, and then the community around that. And so getting to meet you through some of this, the interest in common law and what Brother Truth was putting out, and some of the stuff that I've also shared here on Fire and Soul. And then to meet you at a live event with Brother Truth in Houston, gosh, now 6-7 weeks ago. And Brother Truth is coming on the show actually next week. So that's going to be cool to tie that in together. But connecting and realizing that we had so much in common right away, our love for the Gene Keys, our love for nature, our love for all things truly conscious and sovereign and free. And then getting to learn that you're Whitney Magic of the crypto world. I mean, it's just such an honor. And I'm excited to offer up what I believe will be a bit of an introductory to all things crypto and why crypto now, in a way that hopefully I ask enough questions that our audience is thinking. And so for that, I just want to say thank you for being on my path, and for now being on all of our viewers and listeners' path as well. This is a real moment of, I think, synchro destiny.
Totally. Oh, I'm so delighted to be here and drop in as well. And we'll cover so much land in this topic. And it's really just like people coming in and bringing like a curious, open mind and being like, question of like, is crypto for you? What are some of the fears that have come up? Because we're just going to start to like diffuse and dismantle some of these fears so that hopefully people can align themselves to more freedom, more of the future, have their money work for them. So I'm just excited for this chat.
I love that. Everything about what you just said is so the love language, really, in so many different threads that's happening here on Fire and Soul, because the show is also shifting with the evolution of our times. So that said, speaking about evolution, you've had quite a journey the past few years. So can you share whatever you feel called to share about how you got to where you are now? Because part of your story is so extraordinary for me. Of one part of your story is taking $25,000 cash and turning that into a $500,000 nest egg, and in 9 months. And that is obviously very inspiring in a very risky, otherwise complicated topic. And so, yeah, whatever is alive in you that you would like to share that brings us to speed of your journey.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to bring you back. So back in 2020, 2020 is when things really began for me. A little bit before, but I was very much like walking more of a spiritual path or spiritual curious path. And I had no idea where things were going to take me. But before, I was previously a construction engineer working the corporate life, living in DC. Things were very traditional, and I was honestly bored with life and reality. But a lot of things were just like life has shown me from past situations, from family, from society, like go this pathway. And I realized I was like, this is not the way for me, but I have no idea what this is going to entail. So after a lot of spiritual work for the years prior to that, I finally got to the point, January 2020, I left the corporate engineering career and stability, and I left DC, I left America, and honestly just hopped on a plane halfway around the world over to Bali. And I was like, I need to be here for a 4-week corporate detox and like figure something else out.
Wow, wait, hold up. Was that before the lockdowns or?
Yes.
Oh, wow, your intuition was so on fire.
So strong, always, always. And granted, I am like just coming over with a suitcase of planning to be abroad for 4 weeks.
Of course.
I get there, and like the short of it is I end up staying abroad for 2.5 years.
Wow.
But it was in that I like dropped myself into a community, into different people who were speaking about, like, had different pathways, like creatives doing things differently, online people doing things differently. And there was one guy in particular that I met, actually met the first meal that I was eating alone. He invited me to sit down with him, and he started talking to me about the problems in the financial system, the health of it, where the world is shifting to, how he even spots patterns and understands like investing, managing his own things, macroeconomics, all these things that the engineering mind in me, the network thinking mind was like, I need to know more about this. And also, why have I never thought about my own financial health and owning my own stuff? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was amazing that it took just one conversation to spark this fascination with me. And that guy became my crypto mentor, taught me about the financial world, and I like dove deep in for the next year into a financial sabbatical.
Mm.
But it was from that point, one conversation really changed things. And then from there, the quick cliff notes is March came around and I pulled my retirement fund out. And I was like, with the help of my mentor and for myself, I was like, I'm going to learn how to manage this money. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to learn this stuff. And I just have this feeling, I have this knowing like something will work.
Mm.
From there, studied, played with a whole bundle of different assets, ended up watching 38K go down to 25K within like 6 months. Like there was so much volatility in 2020. And then October 2020 rolled around and we were like, yo, we've been studying crypto for so long. We know that this is the future. We know that the crypto market particularly runs on a 4-year market cycle, which we can dive deeper into. And he's like, the time is now. We need to move everything to here. Unfortunately, he had been doing a lot of studying and spotting patterns in the market. And exactly that's what I did is I put all of that money when it was at 25K at that time, and then I watched time work for me. So then by May 2021, my portfolio was valued at 550K. And I was like, what? Like this stuff works. And there's patterns and systems. And there was this huge feeling where I was like, I built it, I could do it. Like freedom exists and it's possible more than what mainstream wants us to know.
I want to actually take a moment to go back to a few things that you said. Number one is before 2020, before you had left America and your job at DC and just packed a bag that you thought you'd be gone maybe for a few weeks, you said that you had been doing a lot of spiritual work beforehand. So that's really important to note because I believe these last 3, 4 years of us doing the deep inner work, facing our shadows, alchemizing, integrating that, right? And then transmuting into fuel, into just so much opportunity. But it's that right there that fueled then another very courageous decision that you made that I don't want to just sort of skate over, which is you took everything out of a 401k. I mean, how did that feel when you went through that process? You're around the world, you're not home, mommy and daddy is not like around the corner, right? Like, and that's everything you have that you've earned that we think is safe, but yet many I know who watch this show know it's not, right? So how did that feel? I mean, how did you work with yourself in order to make those withdrawals and bet on yourself?
Okay, so the first part, I find making these moves is a game of trust. Everything is about trust. But it was, do I have enough information to be able to trust the future going forth?
Mm.
And so for me, I know that I'm someone who's very quick to trust. I don't need as much information, but I had been in it with my mentor for for a month. And I was like, I know that crypto's the future. I know that at least I'm aligning myself to future assets in a future way. So I was like, I can do this. I can bet on myself. Why would I do that rather than keeping my money in this old system?
Mm-hmm.
So the physical act, also being abroad and like calling Vanguard and being like, hey, and having to like wait up until the wee hours of the night and them giving a lot of pushback, a lot of friction. Are you sure you're doing this? Did someone tell you to do this? I had my mentor with me to help emotionally support me as well in that process. And he was like, just see how the system works. They feel threatened. They don't want you to leave their system. And it's so true. Like the banks and all these things, they push back because they want to keep your energy and your money in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a huge quest in itself, just to be like, I own this, I want this. The next move that we actually made was really extreme. Well, not extreme, but it was just a little bit crazy. A little side note is just like, we flew over to Singapore and I put all that money actually into silver bars and stored it in Singapore. It was crazy. But anyways, that's a little side tangent. We don't need to go down the road. And it was super calculated too of why. But with that being said, it just felt like a theme constantly of just empowerment and ownership of my money in so many different ways. That didn't necessarily scare me. It more so excited me to finally be like, finally, I get this system. I'm able to play with the system and tinker and understand how it works and test it in different ways. And the more that I do that, the more I get to build this confidence of what's for me and what's not.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. What did happen with the silver bars, by the way?
Silver. So I put it in like 2 weeks right before the big COVID lockdowns, and nothing, it didn't blast. I should have held it for a little bit longer, but I wanted to move it over into something else. So I went net value, but it was a good experiment anyways for me to be like, I can move my money from cash actually to Bitcoin and then to silver bars and then sell it and then move it to other assets too. So there was a game with that.
Yeah, and what you're talking about here is actually part of my journey. When I first bought my first, I don't know, maybe it was like 5K worth of silver coins and one little gold coin in some LA gold dealership. It's like you would have thought I had the energy of like a bank robber or a thief. Like I felt scared. I was like, whose watch? I mean, it was and my mother, who's definitely my ally and partner in crime in this, like she was also buying some with her little nest egg of cash. And we were both just like, scared. But that process actually is what strengthened me in spiritual courage, right? It's just like going through a little bit at a time, and we're going to get there, but just to also kind of bridge the gap for a moment. My first investment into crypto, I want to say it was even $500. I thought it was 1,000, but I want to say it was $500. Maybe it was 1,000. I should go back and look. It was something between there, and I felt good about that because it was like I'm going to build my own self trust. I'm going to not just be ridiculous and put everything I have into that. I'm just going to see how this feels. And I'm going to grow in my confidence, in my ability to know what I'm doing, to trust myself. And also, I'm going to have a healthy relationship with risk, which I always have. I'm an entrepreneur, let's be clear. But for those who are like, let's say, corporate execs, corporate employees, and maybe they have a really nice 401k or a Roth IRA or all the traditional ways in which we've been told, or real estate, keep your money here because it's safe. What would you say to that? Or what do you say to some of the women that you're working with these days?
Wouldn't you just want to diversify?
Yeah.
It's a simple game of diversification. We have come from a world where things have worked in a certain way. Um, Whether that's real estate, whether that's 401ks, like they're all that has worked for a past generation. We are in changing times with changing opportunities, with new systems coming in, and a big game of money and growing your money and aligning to those times too is aligning to the future, aligning to the changing times. And if people are too stuck in like what their parents have done or their grandparents have done, you're living an outdated model.
Mm.
So even getting a percentage into crypto and exposure, like why would you not? I find that's the big question. It's not, are you in crypto? It's a question of why are you not in crypto?
I think a big part of that, at least for me and some of the women that I have the honor to guide and or my friends, my family members, it's like because it feels overwhelming to get educated in it, which is why I'm bringing you on so that we can actually just kind of. I love what you said. It's like let's just go in 2 feet into the pool or the lake, right? Speaking to your trip back from Maine and being at the lake recently, we're not going to go too deep. It's just kind of like what is crypto? And why crypto now and an opportunity that is upon us. And I know for sure that in these last 4 years, since you traveled to Singapore and all of that amazing living that you chose to do for yourself, you've now come back with such a true embodied wealth perspective of wisdom, experience, and now guiding so many other women with the divine feminine energetics into an otherwise very complicated, confusing, and yes, overwhelming topic. So wherever you want to start with, what is crypto, and then we'll move into maybe why now.
Yeah, I would love to drop into some patterns because really, like my little thesis, my ethos around this, which I know you're familiar with, is really training your brain to spot patterns aligned to the future. And I find a big reason that crypto feels really overwhelming is because people don't know some of the main patterns that are so important to understand in crypto. And once you can see it from more of like an energetic perspective rather than like a financial perspective, it intuitively drops in for people and they can understand like, oh, I get what I'm investing in. I understand why. And I also understand how to build a plan so that it's not super risky. Like I find it's more about building a calculated risk rather than just seeing as, oh, this is a speculative, this is a gamble. No, no, no. There's actually plans and strategy to these things.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so let's start off. What is crypto?
Yeah.
So crypto, by definition, is a digital currency or technology that's run by the blockchain. And big key thing to focus on with here is like people can be like, is it just magic internet money? And I'm like, no, it's not magic internet money. It's run by the blockchain. The blockchain is code. So what this particularly means is if you compare the old financial system, you look at the legacy system, which is run by the banks, the governments, you have your bank accounts. All of these things are run by entities, centralized entities. So it's people controlling things. Anytime you swipe your credit card, anytime you're asking to take money out from the bank, you're asking permission from someone to do that. You're
Yep.
being like, bank, can I please have my money?
It's
Like,
very real. I'm going to interject for a moment and pardon me. I recently secured my home in Austin. I'm renting a beautiful property and I had to send the security deposit. And the owners, wanted Zelle. And I was like, no problem. And my bank, Chase, centralized bank, said, no, you can only send $500 a day. Well, I had many, 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 many days of that. Or I could say no, and I worked around it and found Venmo actually would be willing to let me send over the whole deposit. But it was like Big Brother on steroids. It was like, who are you to tell me what to do with my money? Right. And I get they under the guise of security risks and protection and all that, but I have already clicked off on all the I read, I agree, like I understand all the risk, all the liability. What is the problem here? And so for that, they want to control where your money goes. And so anyway, please continue because this literally just happened. So it's very real for me. And I'm not a fan.
so I love to see that as experimentations. You get to test, you get to poke the system to be
Mhm.
like, hey, what are your weaknesses? What do you actually feel fearful about? If you can start to see this, you can start to understand the problem. I like to see investing. My engineering brain goes like problem solution. Let's identify the problems that are in society and we can start to see the solutions of where we're going to shift to because these are already friction points. When there's friction, the like a free market, the world naturally is going to shift to things that are not friction filled.
Right.
And then you obviously, as like us who want freedom, who want exponential wealth, who want our money, our work to work for ourselves, we want to align to those solutions.
Yes.
So seeing more of those problems, like with a good amount of my clients, they'll like, I'll find like I'll 10 to 20% of people will run into different problems with their banks of people being like, you want to send this over to a cryptocurrency exchange. Is that okay? Is that really what you want? Who told you to do this?
Oh, I didn't even go there yet. I was literally flat out denied. I mean,
Yes.
Chase again, and this is why I opened up, a new account at a credit union, and now I'm opening up a couple of accounts here and creating my own trust that's a private, irrevocable foreign trust, so I can just do whatever I want in and out of it. And there's banks here in Austin that love that. But yes, I tried to buy some. I think it was actually on Coinbase, and Chase just shut it down, wouldn't even allow it. So I had to do it another way. So it's again, I just keep having to get creative, which requires more time, more energy, more frustration. It's just like it's
Friction,
not
friction,
you.
friction.
Friction,
The
friction.
system is going to die. It's
Yep. I
maybe
know.
not. I don't like to be extreme. I don't know if it's going to die, but there are going to be. I believe that there are going to be multiple systems that exist there, and it's a question of do you want to be early to this new system? It's like if real estate way back in the day was like a hot booming thing, do you want to be aligned to crypto where there's networks where money is going up in value? This is a growth based ecosystem where more capital keeps flowing in. Do you want to be aligned to that? Or do you want to be aligned to a system that may be crumbling and even being in cash, like you're losing 3.5% each year to inflation? Like,
Right.
would you rather that or would you rather growth based?
Right.
So fundamentally, if we're just going back to like what crypto is, yes, it's a system that's it does not run by centralized entities. It's not run by humans, because ultimately centralized entities means that like humans are the ones creating interest rates, changing interest rates, printing dollars. It's banks, humans giving you permission. Like it's not run by humans.
We also call them controllers, but there is that, yes.
Yes. And then over here in crypto, it's run by the blockchain, which is run by code. So that makes the system automatic, which quite honestly, I'm like, we're in 2024. Like, shouldn't the money system be automatic? Why is
Right.
it not?
Yeah, well, it is now for many, many, many who are getting on board. So this is exciting times. Not perfect yet. It's still very, very new, but okay, continue because what I got really excited about was when you shared about how the blockchain is really code and that is what is creating the crypto. Honestly, a few months ago, I thought blockchain was another crypto. So this is really good. It's like, wait, how is that different? Oh, now I think I'm beginning to understand that. So can you expand a little bit more on that part?
Yep, totally. So, okay, three terms that people hear a lot that they use interchangeably and might get a little confused is Web3, crypto, and blockchain.
Yeah.
Web3 is more of the big sector. It's the movement of all the crypto space, but all the blockchain technology. Um, you know that I like to compare crypto to the internet, and we'll get into that analogy. But really, like if you look at like what the internet is, that's like what we do to talk and to interact, and it's a tool that we use. But how it works, we don't actually look at how it works and how the internet would work, and like how crypto works. That's the blockchain.
Code.
Yep, code. So the blockchain is the technology. Crypto is the coins that you buy, the things that live on top of the technology.
Mm-hmm.
So all of it's very important, but ultimately I'm going off and I'm buying crypto coins.
Okay. Now, just relating it back to the internet really quickly, because I'm just wanting to make sure that I fully understand this too, is like that, would that be like different, I don't know, websites on the internet would be like, or like e-commerce shops of buying? I guess
Yeah.
it's infinite different ways of which you could buy into, but what would be the equivalent of a coin on the blockchain to something on the internet? Or is the internet the coin on what would be
No,
the code? Okay, I want to make
no.
sure I'm getting this because this is not
Uh,
easy to understand for
it,
some people. Maybe it's me.
okay. I feel like the internet would be the closest to Web3. And then
Okay.
the things that you build upon. So like Google, being a search engine, Facebook,
Yes.
social medias. These are different. And then you can like those are sectors that live within the internet. And so there's the same thing within crypto is like there's crypto is just not a blanket place. And I find this is where some people get really overwhelmed. But I really like to hold people's hand and I'm like, welcome to the crypto world. Do you want exponential? Do you want to align to the future? There are different sectors that live within it. You do not have to invest in all the cryptos, but instead you have to understand what type of cryptos you do want to invest in. So like examples, within the crypto world, there are meme coins. So if anyone's heard about Dogecoin or Shiba Inu,
Yeah.
that's a Dogecoin, that's a meme coin. There is DeFi, decentralized finance. I personally, that's my favorite.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
there's AI, there's GameFi, there's DePIN, so there's like all these different sectors because there's different use cases that live within the greater crypto world.
Okay, got it. So, what else do we need to know about crypto? Because what I'm picking up on right now is the more important conversation that wants to be had that I know that you're totally here for is the self trust and the self love that also needs to be foundational um, as part of our inner journey in order to like embark on even becoming educated or getting curious. It's like there's a stabilization within that needs to happen so that no matter what we're rooted, so we're like we feel intuitively guided and we're like making really good decisions and choices and even choosing our mentors or our guides, you know. So that's actually what I'm picking up on as I'm remembering what it was like to first begin to like open up my centralized credit card and put it on to Coinbase, right? And like buy my first little bit of crypto or Bitcoin. And so, what else do we need to know in the realm of what is crypto before we move on to the different types of opportunities that are available to us?
I think we're going to tie this topic out with the internet analogy.
Okay.
So I love to see like we all know if we went back to like 1999. I mean, I was a little like first grader, I believe, third grader. I'm
I was
30
not.
now. Yeah. I'm 30 now, but
Oh, that's cool.
so if you go back to those times, you can even question and notice, how did society relate to the internet? What was the mindset around that?
Mm.
People, the responses I've gotten is a lot of people being like, well, we were fearful. Like, uh, I would not take any payments on the internet. People were fearful of putting their credit card in. Who's going to hack it? You don't know who it is. So honestly, people felt distrust and they were like, maybe who knows if this is going to be the future.
And they felt confused and overwhelmed, just like they do now. Confused and overwhelmed. Like I remember my parents, like a smartphone, throwing it like well, we don't need a smartphone, or I will never invest. I would never put my credit card onto the internet, So yes, very true.
So when something is so innovative like the internet, this is where crypto is as well. It's like you can either deny it, but what you're denying yourself is a great opportunity. So it's like thinking back then, what would happen if you were investing in Apple, Microsoft, some other tech things, given we had like the dot-com boom? Like how much wealth would you have today? And how smart would other people be like, oh, you did the thing? Well,
Yeah.
guess what? We're at that time right now with crypto.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's only been around for 15 years.
Mhm.
Mainstream finally has some market adoption with it. We have exciting things that have finally come in this year, which is called like the Bitcoin ETF,
Mhm.
Ethereum ETF, if anyone's heard about that. That's really just an ability, a tool that allows big institutions like the BlackRocks and different people to be able to buy it in a good model for them. There's pros and cons to all of it, but collectively, I do see it as it's a positive trend for the adoption of crypto. So just realize, like, I know people have a big concern around like crypto, like, is it going to be here? But like, crypto is the future. It's not going away. You can't really kill it. So it's like, do you either want to join now or do you want to join later?
Yeah, and
You pick.
I would say it's here. It's already now. It's already happening. I mean, how many crypto users are they estimating at this point around the world?
Right. So good number. So internet users currently we're at 5 billion.
Wow.
Crypto users, we're at 560 million. So
Wow.
that's a 10x difference, a little less than 10x difference. So just think about how prices are going to have to go up on all forms, more people using it, more capital flowing in. It's an exponential growth. Um, so we're really just getting started.
Yeah, it's so incredible. And please don't quote me anyone, but I was listening to my friends, both have been on the show, Aaron Apke and Jay Griff on their Great Awakening podcast. And Jay Griff, I mean, this is just what he likes to diversify too, right? So it's not only about crypto and Bitcoin, but definitely it's a huge part of what he teaches on as well. But I think he said that Stripe now has over 50 million crypto users, and that Stripe is, well, of course, it offers the ability to transact via Stripe, and that PayPal has now just adopted that. So I find that that's what you're talking about. The mainstream institutions like are being forced to get involved. But to your point, the more that happens, the more that you get really present to, do I want to get involved now? Or do I want to wait until the masses are like, okay, it's mainstream, but you'll pay a premium then and maybe lose out on the ability to have reached a really exponential gain in this period of time currently. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yep. And I do just one little asterisk too to all
Yep.
this is like there's over a million different types of cryptos to invest in right now. So I do just want to put in that it's like not to overwhelm you. Some of them are not going to do well, like a lot of them. It's just, and so it's a matter of aligning to things that are part of the future, even part of the next year that we have that's coming up. So it's like this is where I teach frameworks and help people just like vet certain things and welcome them to the crypto world so they can align their portfolio to something that's exciting and growth oriented. But I do find if people try to go in at this as a complete newbie, they are either not aligned to their wealth goals or emotions get in the way. And there's a whole bundle of things, but just want to plant some seeds that like not all cryptos are created equal.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too, because I may know people directly that I think came into the crypto type of opportunity a couple years back with almost like the same mindset of a gambler's addiction.
Yes. Yeah.
You saw that, and I'm sure you continue to see that. It's like, ooh, the buy in the lotto ticket type of mentality, right? And so that is where I've seen some people lose pretty big, and I've also seen on the flip side of that, people who are pride themselves on getting really educated on everything, but for whatever reason, they just trusted the guy or the girl to just take their 100K or their $500,000 or their 10K, doesn't even matter, and then they lost it all. They don't know what happens. So they're like, oh, crypto's dangerous. So those really interesting, super high risk stories Can you speak to that for a moment? Because I think that could be in the way of people even wanting to be curious, is like, oh, I've heard that story. And now they've just made a definitive decision, at least for the time being, that this is not for them because it's too risky.
Yes, totally. Where do I begin with this? Okay, so because there's two things that are the two little pathways to go down. The first one is having a story of someone else in your world who has gotten something wrong in crypto and then created this negative narrative that crypto's bad, crypto, I lose money with crypto, or they've seen emotional hurt from people.
Mm.
And a big thing with this is that a lot of times people do come into crypto, and I've experienced this for my own self. It's just like the emotional game that happens as a crypto investor is like it becomes a spiritual process. Like you learn so much about yourself, your relationship to money, your relationship to greed, wealth, ego, everything. And so
Wait,
some
hold up. You got to slow that down. Can you just repeat that? Because, yeah, that like really landed for me. Yeah, we need to let that one marinate. Can you say it again, please?
Yeah, and I have stories for days about that one. But
Please share one because that feels like it's a snag right now.
yeah, so okay, humans are wired to linear growth. They're wired get the next promotion, go into the next grade, one after the other. It's very methodical and very time oriented. Humans are not wired to exponential growth. So
Mhm.
when, for example, for myself, going from 25K to over $500,000 in 9 months, my body, that was not in my expectations at all. I was not wired to that at all. I
Mhm.
was like, what? And so on an emotional level, when that happens, um, for me, it's like noticing there's little milestones. Like the 100K mark was really powerful for me to be like, yes, I did it. And then once I got above 300K to 500K, I kind of disassociated. And the only mindset I had was, I'm going to go to $1 million. Why? There's no reason to.
Because that's what we're programmed to do is like it's always about the next level, right? Yeah.
And the greed kicked in too. I was like, there's going to be more. I'm right. The ego kicked in around that. And it was honestly something that I couldn't prepare myself for.
Mhm.
The only thing that would have helped me is if I had a little bit more emotional support and community.
Mm.
My mentor at the time, he didn't have capacity for that. He's more of a finance dude and not emotionally tapped in that sense. So I felt very much like I was riding blind. And I find a lot of people in crypto who also see exponential growth, they can emotionally shut off. Same thing happens. They ride the money up, they ride the money down, or they make stupid decisions in the process because like they're not connected.
Right.
And so this is just going back to how people can associate things as crypto being evil is because crypto is a growth process. Like you grow, you mature, you evolve spiritually and emotionally as a human in the process. So I don't think receiving and watching exponential growth happen with money is a bad thing, but it's more about how people respond to it, and people have given it a negative context in that sense.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you have so many different case studies, but you chose to use yourself as that example. I think that's really cool. So thank you for being real with us. And I think that, yeah, once again, the bigger conversation here is the through line of cultivating a conscious connection within, right? Doing that deep inner work and building up that spiritual strength and clarity, whatever that might mean for each person. And then like, okay, I know I'm good, right? And even though life is life and we're very human and and shit happens, but it's like at the end of the day, I trust myself. And so I'm gonna slow down, I'm gonna take my time, I'm gonna know what I'm doing, I'm gonna put the right resources and support teams in place. I'm gonna be around conscious community that's also having this conversation. So I'm not the outlier and everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy, which is gonna feed my insecurities and the places where I don't feel as confident. So I'm beginning to see the bigger picture painted here, which is actually another reason why I moved to Austin, because I knew that this is kind of like the golden era of such a beautiful consciousness of so many people coming who are aligning to a future that really serves us, aligning to a future that we are all co-creating, call it New Earth, whatever you want to call it. But you've referenced that a few times. And so just felt like it was important to weave that in the moment because that is such a big part of what this conversation really is.
It totally is. And like, I'm similar to you. Like, I came to Austin too for community.
Mhm.
And now also here, I'm over here building my digital community too with like, I'm like, now is the time for women, particularly I'm like, my soft spot is for conscious women or women who are walking this path and want to create more freedom for themselves and will naturally keep on evolving, and not so that we don't have to build wealth alone. Like
Mm.
building wealth is not a solo sport. Anyone who thinks that, like, good luck. Also, like, I want to rise up and I want to be surrounded with other people who have aligned to different wealth goals and then also wire their brains to bigger thinking, bigger dreaming, bigger impact in the world.
Yes.
So there's no mistake that a lot of wealth is shifting hands. I know that other people like Jay Griff has spoken a lot about like the fourth turning. Like we're at a time where the world is evolving and shifting. And it's with that that money, energy, power is shifting from one set of hands to another.
Yes.
This is where I'm like, we need to have communities, conversations, tuning up yourself emotionally, understanding what's going on, feeling excited, feeling empowered about your finances. It's a complete shift. In particular for women too, because there's like a huge rise of the yin and women in power. And so I find the more that women, it's such a healing thing for women just to talk more about their relationship to money, why we're in the things that we're doing. And it's the more that we talk about it, we clear ways to allow ourselves to be a stronger conduit and a stronger anchoring force to be able to hold that much power.
Yeah. Yeah, I've come to really know, especially in these past many months or 2 months since I've been in Austin, 2 months and 1 week exactly today, that we find ourselves in each other's stories, you know. So this is why it feels so important for me to bring on people like you that are embodied in this, that are now teaching this, and all for the right reasons, in service to all. When you talked about money is changing hands in terms of the controllers, which is just like a tiny, tiny few families, probably really, or off-worlders, not really sure about all of that just yet, or if I ever will be, but then it's like into the hands of we, the people. There is a common thread in the movement of freedom on every single level. And it requires self authority. It requires an autonomy. It requires a connection to the divine, right? So I'm just kind of grounding it in what I know is really at the essence of what this show represents, but also through that is some really real opportunities. So can we circle back to, you had briefly touched on it, the 4-year cycles that you've seen crypto go through since basically, what is it, 2010, 2009? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so can we talk about that? Because it seems to align also with the general election cycle, if I'm not incorrect, which is interesting because where did crypto start? Was it US based? Was it, I mean,
So Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, which is an unknown dude,
Oh,
person. Yeah. So, and I personally think that that's actually really beautiful.
okay.
People have a lot of opinions around this, but I'm like, it's so pure that the founder who's created this, there, it doesn't become this political thing of like, this person's done that. It's about them. No, it's just been created and it's put out into the world.
Mm.
So 2009, this was created. Every 4 years in the crypto in Bitcoin, it's written in code. So this is where it goes back to like, I love when people have a lot of questions, typically I say like, go watch a video about what the blockchain actually is. And then that helps resolve a lot of things because you understand how it works and you start to build your trust.
Mhm.
So going into it, there's this event that happens once every 4 years. It's called the Bitcoin halving. And
Mhm.
what that means is at that time, the amount of rewards, the amount of they pay out to certain miners, it's how the blockchain works, it's cut in half. So it adds a level of scarcity into the code. You don't really have to get into what it means, but just for you guys right now, just realize that every 4 years this event happens.
Mm.
This year it happened in about April of 2024. And then typically what has happened every 4 years this happens. Also, you know, what happens every 4 years? US election,
Okay.
US being the big dog, of the globe politically. There's a lot of factors that go in. So typically from about April until November, there's either rises up or there's some chop that happens in between. This is where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And then once the market has clarity, once they're like, we understand who's there. Also, if interest rates change, if dollars get printed as well, those are all very positive factors for the crypto world. So we're at this time where prices have dropped a lot. We're at this in between point. And then what we can hopefully expect after the election, which we've seen every 4 years, is prices go absolutely parabolic. They go crazy up in crypto.
Parabolic, otherwise known as a bull market.
Bull market, exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay. Where would people start? You talked about what is crypto, and then now you're giving a pretty nice introductory as to why crypto. Is there anything else that you feel? I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? You normally have a presentation. You've been a guest speaker in my women's mastermind called Magnetic Creator, and you have such a gorgeous presentation. I'm like, ooh, is there anything else that I'm supposed to be asking you? Because I'm learning too, right, as we go, which is what I love about hosting this show is I'm learning right alongside my listeners and viewers. I might have done a little bit more in a couple of years ago, but I'm ready to go much deeper, right? And so it's just like, oh, okay, I'm building that trust. I'm getting more clarity around this, and I'm also getting excited because the more that I open to it, the more and more people that I meet, where it's like, oh, of course, it's a no brainer. Like you want to be diversified, you want to absolutely be a part of what could, and many are calling because of the fourth turning as a real viable thing that's probably happening right now to create generational wealth. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that with hyperbole. Like this is a really real thing. So what else do you hope to be asked right now or that you know needs to be covered?
Okay, so there's one thing around the 4-year market cycle I really just want to anchor in.
Yeah.
So whenever we're looking at crypto, I know because like I get this like exponential wealth, like when you're saying multi-generational wealth, exponential wealth, like it can feel like it just doesn't process into the brain. It would not have processed into my brain. But like I'm also evidence over here that I saw an average of a 22x change happen in my portfolio. One of my assets went by 100x, turned 1.5K into over 110K. So like I'm evidence here, but I also just want to say if any of this stuff feels fuzzy or crazy, use history. Go back to the Bitcoin charts. Go look back at other charts like Cardano is one that did really well for me back then. I wouldn't be investing in Cardano right now, but just saying like historically, it's out there. Go look at the charts. It's
Mm-hmm.
evidence.
Mm-hmm.
This happens. And so to anchor in the 4 year, it's like I've really been sharing and helping my people. Like my strategy is really around getting people to see, tune up, understand the factors, the things to look for in this stuff. But it's really around buying in 2024 and selling sometime in 2025, given a lot of economic factors. But like that's the plan, that's the move, and how you align yourself and what you align yourself to is really the work. That's the research. So just realizing it's possible. It's also the opportunity window is open, but it's not open for long. And when prices blast off, this is the biggest mistake that people make is they'll buy when prices are high, when everyone else and their friends are talking about this. And at this point, prices are up. Like it's a little bit too late.
Yeah, so interesting. Now, when you talk about buying low in 24, which is the opportunity right now, because we're at the bottom of the end of the 4-year cycle, right before the general election, and then right after, as we've seen historically, and you can really trace this back if you start to think about that, money will be printed, interest rates will go down, and then there's a whole another bottoming out. And many are saying, I mean, like global economists are saying that like next year, come maybe who knows, late summer or fall. And I'm by all means, this is not me giving advice or speaking definitive truth. It's just do your own research around maybe the greatest recession that our world has ever seen. Now, I really hope that that's not the case, and maybe it won't be, but there will be other people that will see the opportunities because that is always the case too, right? So when you talk about buying low and then selling maybe within, I don't know, by late summer in 25 or whenever someone would choose to do that at a much higher number, is then that to reinvest into other crypto opportunities?
Um, So at that point, you've made more cash, you've made more capital. You can then pick and choose what you want to do. I like to say, like, the question I always like to ask for people is like, what are your wealth goals? And get really unapologetic and raw and real with yourself. Myself, I'm like, I'm here to grow my money exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also balance it and diversify it in the crypto sector, but I'm taking advantage of an opportunity. And I have no problem saying 10 to 20x investments or beyond. That's my type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's owning that. And then, sorry, your question again?
I think it was around what do you do with the cash
Oh,
outs, right? So yeah,
so,
reinvest.
so then, so yeah, so
Whatever
if
you
you want
want.
If you want to stay in the crypto world, you can always you can like sell it down to like a cash equivalent, and then you can keep on buying things in, or you can rotate out, put it into your cash. If you want to go buy your home, if that's something that's been on your list, if you want to grow out your business, if you want to travel the world, if you want to keep on growing that wealth, like that cash is there for you to figure out what you want to do with.
Yeah. So because it's interesting, when I think about diversifying and the different opportunities, like my mind immediately goes to I would cash out and buy more gold and silver because I'm equal right now. Like I have the same amount invested into gold and silver as I do my crypto and Bitcoin. And I'm kind of even Bitcoin and crypto, but where I feel really called based on your inspiration and your guidance is to invest way more heavily in some of the cryptos that I'm a fan of. How does someone learn about what cryptos do and what ones they might be drawn to? You talked about the ones that you're drawn to, which are very similar to me. But how do people even get that sort of education?
That's what I teach.
Ah,
So I do believe, and this is me not selling, but at the same time, if you want help and support, like I have frameworks that I teach,
I
but
hope that anyone who feels called to learn under you, especially because it's so affordable, and we're going to get there in a moment. I'm not an affiliate, FYI, but I do believe in what you're doing because I've seen your story and I know you personally. And you come from such an embodied lens of transformation and consciousness. That's why you're here. So by all means, share your goods, girl.
I do, if this is a path you want to walk, I 100% like without fail, like you need to find your teacher. You need to find an education, someone that resonates with you, someone that sparks your joy, and someone that excites you to be like, I want to show up and I want to keep on walking this path, because at certain times it will not feel super great and you will need help and support. So, with this being said, you need to have a base foundation in education. Sure, you can do this on YouTube, like YouTube University. People do this and study it. But quite honestly, like YouTube is filled with people that you don't necessarily know if you can trust or not trust.
Absolutely.
I personally am someone who I'm just like, when I resonate with someone, I just want to go in and I want to just like learn how to be able to vet certain cryptos. So just make sure that when people are teaching you these things, they're teaching you how to like spot frameworks. Like this is what I help people do, is being like, we're identifying problems and solutions. How do you train your brain to be able to spot what are hot narratives, what are hot projects, what's undervalued? And that's a whole science in itself. And then diversifying yourself and balancing as well.
Okay, good. What are some of the most common questions that you get asked in your, um, whether it's with you're presenting, speaking, engaging with people at networking events, or working with your clients? Well, actually, let's take it back. Before they're working with you, what are the like? I mean, I hate to ask like the frequently asked questions because that generalizes so much, but there we tend to see patterns, right, in the questions that come up, especially with women, which is I know whom you guide exclusively. And I'm such a fan of that because I do think that we can be a little more volatile in our emotions and we are a little more risk adverse. And in general, right, I tend to be, I'm going to go on in and leap a tall building in a single bound. That's just kind of what I've always done, but it doesn't mean that I didn't have lots of feels, right? I'm just willing to be with that and move forward anyway, but I know that I am not your typical woman on the streets.
Oh, okay. So I like to see first that people will like, I think the most beautiful part of the journey is people come in not knowing what to ask at all. And
Yeah.
so that's even like where you might be in this spot right now, is being like, I don't know what questions to ask. And the great part is the more that you learn, the more questions you have to ask. So even
Yeah.
like you could have had context around the blockchain, but now you're like, oh, I can see the difference between a coin and a network. I invest in a coin. Oh, I didn't realize there were different sectors in crypto. Okay, now how do I spot the ones? How do I build out my strategy? So it's seeing, the more that you see, the more that you learn, the more that you know, the better questions you get to ask.
Mm,
My favorite questions are really when it gets to like people drop the information in and then they get to the emotional blocks around money, around the future that they're building for themselves, around what their friends or family think of them with walking this path, the identity shifts that come with it. It's such a beautiful emotional game that you get to drop into more possibilities for your own self as well, as stories start to come up.
yeah, that empowerment evolution is real. And I'm noticing that even with the common law, trust law stuff that I know that I am now embarking on that journey. And I was telling Aaron Apke the other day, and it's in a text thread with some other friends that are also studying law together. And he's way down the path, right? Many, many years. But I said, doing this thing and doing that thing, like the subtle but profound shift that happened within, it was a remembrance of my own divinity, right? And like, and I mean, everyone knows I got this tattoo that says, remember who you are. What does that even mean if I'm not embodying that through action in service to all, right? So when I think about like building wealth or building even just more financial stability to have more freedom to do whatever I choose to do, it's like I think about my animals, I think about my family, I think about my community, so when I make it be less about just me and make it more about like the larger picture of how this can be in service to not only the people immediately in my world, but also for the evolution of humanity. Now we're talking. Yeah, I see that light
Okay.
up.
Okay, can I share what? Okay,
Please
so
say as much as you want.
obviously, so when money came for me, what it really bought me, it's not really necessarily the physical things it bought me. It was more about, at that point, I was living in Bali. I was able to stay abroad for another year and like really live once again on my own terms. Family didn't, people were like, we want you to come back. We miss you. All these things. And I was like, it's okay for me to be a little selfish for this time. I'm like really learning how to fall in love with myself. I was able to work through a lot more around just like sisterhood relationships, like understanding who I am, getting comfortable in my body, having time and space, and like disconnecting from time in that sense too, which I think is a thing that most people just never really get a chance to explore. I I had this huge curiosity of like wanting to understand like what makes me special or my soul special, and so I found that in the years that followed after that, I was not only able to spend more time for myself, I was able to then travel a year nomadically, but it was really a time of like intimately getting to know myself, know my power, step more in alignment with my mission. Like I didn't want to talk about crypto or money publicly, but it's amazing what happens when you have time and space to be able to shift from one way of being, like for me, the engineering pathway, to then be walking this path of teaching about money, wealth, consciousness, crypto in a way that is completely in alignment with me. Like that took time and resetting.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's like you never know what you're going to do with that wealth or that money when it comes to you or why it's there. But for me, it was really around like, let's have time and space to reset, to step more into power, to step more into impact. And
Mhm.
then from there, you can go on out. And I'm like, I know going forward, my wealth is going to be shifting and impacting in a lot bigger and bolder ways as well. But this was necessary for this time as well.
Yeah, and then there's something to say about the unlocking of the it's a consciousness, it's an energy, it's a light really, which is really everything. Everything is light just condensed into some sort of form, right? Human, rock, animal, tree. um and so it's an unlocking almost of next levels of way of being, which then creates more synchronicities in your life, right? And so because I know that you talk about that a lot, and even you and I, we hadn't actually seen each other outside of the Houston event, which was about a 2-hour drive from Austin. Weeks earlier, we were obviously connected on Instagram, but you were walking through Zilker Park, which is my favorite dog park maybe ever of all time, in the center of Austin. And I see you and I'm like, Whitney. And you like, wait, what? You take off an earbud, whatever you call it. Do you use earpods?
Yeah, yeah.
AirPod. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've used an AirPod. I use earbuds. Okay, and you dropped it. And you're like, I'm literally listening to you in my ear right now. I'm listening to your podcast with Brandon Joe Williams. I was like, whoa. But just that kind of stuff. That's a really small, silly kind of example. But the point is that we don't have to have it all figured out, and we actually don't even know exactly really what we want it all to give to us. We can just get a sense of more freedom, more expansion, more doing life on our terms in a very real way. I think about the Whitney who was probably walking the corporate halls in DC, right? Versus the Whitney walking the beach in Bali. Very different energetic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think this is all going back to freedom in many ways that, once you start walking the freedom path, more levels start getting unveiled as well. So even like over these past 4 years, the level and the depths that I've grown in and that I continue to grow within, I'm like, I don't have things figured out. I'm still figuring out a lot of things. This is why I bring a lot of other women to speak about money and their expertises around this stuff as well, like within my own space. I'm like, I'm constantly a student of life as well. So I think one of the most remarkable things is saying yes to this pathway and being like, I'm not one foot in. I'm not like, maybe I'll like tinker into some Bitcoin or some things like this. But no, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to put my skin in the game. And I know that I'm like in this journey, regardless of what happens, I'm going to become a better human in the process. So it's like saying yes to the freedom journey and seeing what unveils and what unfolds as you go along.
So beautifully said. Yeah. So, are there any other questions that, because I know I probably wouldn't know to ask them, but that like, get asked and that are really important in the early stages? Like, okay, I'm sitting on some funds in a 401k, and who knows what those controllers may or may not do to our money or whatever's going to happen to the fiat dollar. There's a lot of truthers that pay attention to this show, that have a pretty strong point of view on in one way. There's others that it's like I don't know if anyone really knows, and I think actually things are changing because there's conflicting agendas, right? So the more of us that are awakening, the more that they're having to pivot their big grand plans for 2030. But 2030 also has a very spiritual meaning as well. And I, of course, just like to speak of what is happening that's aligned with the light, that's aligned with New Earth, that's aligned with a future that I am in resonance with versus what I'm afraid of. So maybe there's a question in there, but I'm sure there's something for you to pick up on.
Okay, so what is coming through is more of a question around security.
Yeah.
I find that when people get into the crypto space too, because like so with crypto, there can be a lot of excitement, there can be a lot of distortion, but there can also be just a lot of fears that kind of sit there in the way.
Mhm.
So kind of going back to like the question you asked around like people like fearing the things.
Mm.
People do make mistakes around security with crypto because they don't understand fully like how the system works, what are some of the risks that come with it. So just dropping it in for people, it's like just a note if like you leave your crypto on an exchange. So an exchange is an example like Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken. Those exchanges technically own your money, just like how banks do.
Mhm.
And so just seeing that for yourself of like, if you're doing that, that means that you have trust in those exchanges. And I personally love to have people own their own crypto, take it off the exchange, put it into their own hands, and then building out security systems so that they can protect themselves. So if that is a pathway for yourself, just make sure you do also drop into your mind security is a massive importance, and it's not with fear. In fact, like once you understand how the system works, you can understand like what are the possibilities that could really go wrong. And it's more empowering than disempowering. So education goes a long ways when you can start to see what are some of the pitfalls that other people have run into.
Mm. That's so good. And so what you're talking about, I know there's lots of different types, but I have what's called the ledger, which I know that you're a big fan of.
Mhm.
So I have moved, actually, I need to move more over here now. And then you like the Trezor?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You like both, right? Ledger and Trezor, which is a
Trezor,
cold storage wallet.
yep, exactly. Trezor's more of my favorite. But yeah, they both work excellently, and it's more about building a system that works for you.
Totally. But I will say this, when I did my very first transfer, my heart was racing. It was bananas. I was just like, and I only did $100. So you would have thought that I was moving all of it over, and I have actually investments in multiple platforms. And so it was like moving it all over to this little guy into one little spot. I had all the thoughts, even though, and it was so irrational because I knew that, okay, even if I lose this, it's all right. It's there. It's like I don't need to worry about this. It's about having the pass key, right? It's about understanding where my code is and having my code in a lot of different secure spots, multiple different locations. Um, but the panic energy that was so deeply ingrained of security was actually really startling to me of like, it's $100. But yet it was like, am I doing this right? It was, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And I pride myself on being smart, and I was being well guided in the moment with the most patient friend, my friend Paul. If you're watching this, he was such an angel, but I was so scared. I was like pushing back, like, do you know what you're doing? It's just like my fear was coming over me in that moment. So that's a really real thing. And again, all these little baby steps that are no small steps. It's like we are growing in our self trust as we move through this space.
Yes. And like particularly speaking about self-trust, the amount of confidence and trust that I've built within my own self for taking ownership of my money for all these steps and these moves, like light night and day difference between the Whitney that has come over the past 4 years. So for anyone who does want to unlock more confidence, more like one of my questions for myself was like, I want to see how resilient I am. Which
What
is
a good
also,
question.
which is
How
also
resilient
bold.
am I willing to allow myself to be? Yeah, I love that.
So it just tested me in all the ways. But at the same time, when you test, you learn, you grow, you see how much you're capable of.
Yeah.
And from that, you're like, I see what other people are doing. And also, I'm betting on myself. I can trust that, yes, I can do this, but how much more can I do in this lifetime if I'm just saying yes to this one little thing?
Really well said. By the way, segue, but not so much because it's all things investment and aligning to a future. How do you feel about precious metals, gold and silver?
Good, good. I personally don't have as much as I would like at this time. I mean, I have as much as I would like right now,
Yeah,
but going forth, it's like when I'm like, because crypto is rising up so much in this next year, I'm heavy, heavy crypto.
yeah.
And then I can rotate that wealth. This is like the beautiful thing where I'm like, you get to figure out what you want to do with that money. Like you get to rotate the wealth into things, into a more diversified basket or into other things that are really calling to you
Mhm.
when you have more money.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that because I think that's important. And also, every single person that I know that has built any sort of real wealth, that are always talking about diversification. Although very few people are talking about anything in the traditional markets these days and or real estate. So it's like it's going into gold and silver or precious metals or crypto and Bitcoin. I mean, it's just kind of like this is the alignment with the future, at least for the early adopters and those who are the courageous big wave riders right now. We'll see the different types of blessings, really, right? And so that's what it is. It's just there's a reason why these things appear on our path, and this is what I want to get my listeners and viewers present to right now is that, you know, so many of us feel stuck and don't know how to really get true freedom in this moment. And it can feel scary and it can feel overwhelming. And the last thing we're going to do is keep our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, right? Like just trust in how it's always been. We know it's going to shift, we can feel it. And so just consider maybe the possibility of why did this conversation appear on your path today? And what is trying to emerge in your life to get your attention? And then what will you do about it? So that
Mhm.
said, as we are about to wrap, my friend, gosh, an hour has gone by so fast. Well, it's not quite an hour. Can we talk about opportunities? Not only how to maybe learn from you and connect with you, first of all, Instagram for sure, just to get them acquainted with you, but also what do you really teach in your, I think it's your membership that I'm most excited about, Queen of Millions. I love the name of it. I love the energy around it. And of course, I trust you implicitly. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I find, as I spoke about earlier, like the importance of community is not only do you have to have your education, but you also have to have your people in there that help like not only emotionally support you. I find like that is a huge thing. I did want to drop a little in around just like the importance of volatility on both sides, but
You can take your time on that. There's no rush. If that
yeah,
feels important to share, please do.
it'll all we'll all get into it. So with crypto, it's just such an emotional thing. Like I'll be really honest, it's very emotional. Crypto is more about a movement of people. It's we're aligning ourselves to the future. We're watching people say, I'm not choosing this system anymore. I'm choosing this system.
Mhm.
And so therefore it's just I like to speak and teach a lot about like crypto's a game of watching energy flow from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
And with that, people's emotions also flow as well.
Yeah.
So, people on Twitter, people on YouTube, those are big places for crypto news updates. And people can feel very emotional, especially when either price drops down or when price is doing nothing. Everyone in the crypto world is being like, oh my God, I'm dying. And it's like, you guys are being drama queens. You need to upgrade your emotional intelligence. We all know this.
Fair.
You're trying to get clickbait. We get it.
Yeah.
And also, this is why there's an importance to having a community to help anchor you in to be like, I'm still on track. I have my game plan. Getting a game plan in crypto is so important, and being surrounded by people who have that as well. That's
Mhm.
where I say, like, we're taking advantage of this next year as the opportunity.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one side is the emotional support, the information. I share a lot of market intel of like what I'm seeing, training people to train their brains to look for certain things macroeconomically, some things in the crypto world. Like I'm like, Let me teach mini modules to you guys, not in an overwhelming way, but just little bite-sized pieces. And then we also bring guest speakers on. So, like, for example, this month we have a gal who's coming in, Melissa Friedman, so good. She's talking about an introductory course to building out wealth. So it's like the different layers of wealth that come in. Um, we have another gal who's talking about trusts coming up. And
Mm.
so there's different, and then we'll have some different spiritual growth things as well. Diversification tools. Like I have different speakers coming in. So it's like you're not just coming in building out your crypto mindset. Yes, you're doing this, but also you're trying to figure out what do I want to do with my wealth when I have it? I'm dropping into more levels of power.
Mm.
So it's really a community where we have like call once a week and then some chats. It's for women. There's really not many women crypto communities, which is kind of crazy.
No.
Um,
So weird. It's such a bros thing right now. Even like the common law stuff. I'm like, I know there are a few women. Obviously, you're in the crypto space too, just speaking of that topic. But yeah, but I do feel like it's shifting, and the more and more women wake up, it's like, I get that the whole masculine, feminine, and there's like this really strong longing to go back to traditional roles. But at the same time, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we need to be embodied ourselves as a partner in a sacred union, you know? So that's how I feel. And I want to arrive whole into my sacred union, knowing that he also will be arriving whole. From there, we can get into the dance of however we choose for our frequencies to be in an optimized polarity. But it's so interesting, even in like the common law stuff, it was like, I remember asking a friend of mine, a woman who's married, and I was like, "Are you studying this stuff?" And she's like, "No, that's what the husbands are doing." And it was a very interesting comment and no judgment on it, but it was like, yeah, but if anything happens to you, you still have to speak to the policy enforcer. You still have to address the letter from the IRS or maybe appear in court, right? Or whatever. And so there's only so much that the husband can do. At the end of the day, these still are our own individual, roadmaps. I don't know what the right word is that wants to come through right now, but yeah. And then that actually brings us into wholeness, right? And so then I just feel like a far more embodied partner. And the other thing that I witness a lot, not so much in my community, interestingly enough, but the women that don't have any sort of say in the finances and the men who run everything. And so my conversation with some of those women would be like, so what is your experience? Like, oh, my husband takes care of all that. And I was like, huh, interesting. And there's just such a beautiful time to actually wake up and see this opportunity in front of all of us. The last thing I wanted to do was to get myself involved in all this stuff, but it was like I thought I didn't have the time. I thought it was too confusing, and there was a big part of me, even though I know I'm smart and successful and all the things, and I'm wired for entrepreneurship and to think critically and all of that. I was still like, oh, it's too much for me. It's just like, no, it isn't. Just slow it all down, get present and focus and learn. Turn off all the distractions. How about that?
I
And
will
there.
say, I will
Mm.
say also the guys typically in the crypto world in particular, they overcomplicate things. Like they want to work really hard because also men work really hard. They love that. They
It's a nice
love the
tea.
game and therefore they become obsessed and very consumed. And some guys really love trading. I particularly am not a trader. I am more of an investor, which is why I sell like like once every few years type of a thing. But a lot of like it's just a different relationship. And so I find if you want simplicity, yes, it takes time to build that out, but it also takes intention to be like, I want a simplified way. And that's really where I'm like, there's an opportunity. It's once every 4 years. We're at the time. Like it is a very simple and clean model. And you can still diversify yourself and align yourself in these ways. But you don't necessarily need to look at every single thing that the guys say because they love it. They love it.
Yeah. Well, and you love it too, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
As we now do begin to wind down,
Yeah.
a couple of questions. So if people are in, and again, I'm not an affiliate, so I got no skin in the game. I really am here to bring other embodied teachers into our space for you to choose to seize the moment. So if people want to join Queen of Millions, your membership base, is it monthly? Is it a contract? How does that work?
It's quarterly and annually. So we're looking
All right.
at, yeah,
Okay, cool. And so when does that open again?
uh, it's rolling. So you can join at any point.
Okay.
So
Oh, it's rolling. Okay, got it. So you either join for 3 months or you join for a year, and I'm sure there's like a break if, okay. The other question is outside of how to reach you, which I think it's queenofmillions.com, right? And then we'll share your Instagram, okay? Because I think your Instagram stories are really beautiful. It really has you embodied in the freedom spirit. And so I love that. But is there anything that you wish you'd been asked?
one thing around volatility is realizing that yes, crypto is volatile. I will not sugarcoat that.
Mhm.
People sometimes think volatility is a negative thing. But I
Mhm.
really would love for you to guys to see the two sides of the fold of like if volatility goes down really strong, it also goes up really beautifully as well.
Mhm.
And so if you can hold the lows, that's the big thing in cryptos. If you can be like, I know what I'm signing up for, and I'm investing in something that is solid and that has foundationals and that is solving a problem in the world,
Yeah.
also watch it move up as well and be rewarded beautifully as well. So it takes patience, it takes education, it takes all that stuff. But just remember, volatility is not bad if you can see it for the positive side of why you've signed up for it.
Yeah, you bring up then a really good thing that I wanted to share that I remember was helpful for some of the women in my magnetic creator mastermind. And it was letting them know that like when I started, what, two and a half, maybe 2.5 years ago, my friend and one of my dearest friends and mentor, Gary Ng, he said, soul buddy, start with an amount of money that you would be totally fine with if you lost, right? So I can't remember, it might have been $1,000, and I should look back. It was 500, $1,000. And I was like, okay, I'm going to still survive. I'll still be fine, but that might be $100 for someone else, or $10,000, or it's all relative, right? So start with that. And then I would be like, oh, okay. And then he also gave me some great advice of like, don't watch it every day, all day. Don't keep refreshing. He's like, just do it and then let it go. Like maybe check back in 3 weeks. And so that's kind of been my cadence. And then there was like a 6 month period where I forgot to check it. And I was like, oh my God, it grew like 30%, and then it went down again. And but I layered in, and then I would do like another thousand and another thousand. And then like one day I did like 5,000, and I was like, I did like $1,000 buys because I was just really, really confident that day. And I was just like, by the end of the day, I was like, oh, I put $5,000 in today. But I guess I'm saying that because that's how I built my own self trust and my own resiliency and my own relationship to the great unknown, right? And now it's just kind of this thing that's just one part of my diversification portfolio that feels really good and aligned with a future that I feel most resonant with. You've said it so many times here, but it can't be said enough. So I hope that that's helpful for anyone who is about to embark on this journey, and that that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust, see it. What do you trust in the systems? And also you're building a trust in yourself with the system. It's all about relationship. So just see that and realize like even if the fears are there, you get to prove to yourself, can I trust in this or not? It's little tests, little game all the way through. So yeah, trust is a huge, huge, huge theme. I teach so much about that, but yeah, this is our game of just aligning to the future. Like we're in changing times. You're gonna have to trust in something. So either you're going to trust it in the future or you're going to trust it now, but I prefer to do it now rather than later.
Yeah, so good. It's so true. We are in changing times. I feel like trust is like the new relational currency, you know, first with self, with source. I mean, there was a period there, I'm just going to just speak to this for a few moments. There was a period there where I went through a really crunchy few days here in Austin to the point where I was like, what am I doing here? Get me back. And then I was like, but where's home? I don't want to move back to LA. So it was just like, I felt like it was kicking my ass. My dog, there was an attempted kidnap on his life, and then I ruptured my Achilles tendon. Someone hit my car, like a little would have been fender bender. It was like $5,000 of damage. Clearly, I was an energetic of a lot of testing, right? But it actually was. As I look back on that 3 or 4 days, where on the side of the road crying of like, what am I doing here? And then I was questioning whether or not even God was real. I mean, I had to go all the way. But what ultimately it was in terms of this incarnation and this season in my life, it was be all in Austin, be all in,
Mhm.
because I still had all my contents in a storage in California. The movers chose that for me to save me thousands of dollars. They're like, listen, if you transport it across, half the country in the summer, it's going to be a lot more money because people move in the summer. But if you wait until late September, which is when I needed my stuff anyway, he's like, then just whatever. It's in a storage. Like, it makes no difference to you. It would have been in a storage in Austin somewhere because you're in a temporary spot for 3 months. But because I knew it was still in California, there was this little half-heartedness happening within me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so anyway, that whole thing was for me to just choose. I'm going to be here. I'm going to see this through. There's a reason why I'm here, and I'm going to play it all the way I'm playing to win. And so this is then I meet you, and of course the whole thing, right? Like, and I had already met you, but like then it was like, okay, we got to get you on the show. We've got to really anchor into some of these touch points that are already changing my life, and is huge part of why I chose to came here and what was really calling me. So yeah, trust is huge. Gosh, thank you so much, Whitney. So what is your Instagram handle?
Whitney.magic.crypto.
Okay, beautiful. And I'll link that in the show notes. It's been such a pleasure to have you on and to get us an introductory and to give us so much more depth and feminine heart and consciousness into a space that I feel could otherwise be confusing. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's pure delight.